from feeling paralytic and helpless to feeling empowered. So I just want to do a brief check-in and just say hello again. I see people, Olivia checking in from Georgia, Isabella checking in from Germany, so many of you from all over the world. I just want you to write in where you're checking in from. I just want to welcome you all, and then write in your question. I see that Maureen has a question about her teenager who's socializing with his friends online all day, and it's scary for parents when their children are online all day. Understand that our children are going through their own crisis. As a way of reacting to their own crisis and coping, they are going to want to connect socially. And their way of connecting socially is to be on their screens. So we have to understand this behavior. I talk about 3 key strategies that we can use as parents to help our children cope with their feelings. Number 1, we have to become aware of the need beneath the behavior. You will see your children and yourself acting out in unusual ways during a crisis. Overeating, over screen time, over drinking, over sleeping, over socializing. These are our ways of expressing our needs underneath the behavior. The behavior seems over exaggerated. We need to become aware as parents that there is a need beneath the behavior. There is a need. What is the need that my child is expressing? So yes, it looks like too much screen time on the surface, but underneath it looks like, oh my goodness, there's a need. The need is that I need to connect, or the need is I'm anxious and I need to cope. When we understand the need beneath the behavior, you see, we develop compassion. When we develop compassion, we are not reactive. We're not yelling at our children all day. We begin to understand that they too have a need. The second thing we need to understand as parents to help our children cope with their feelings is that we need to accept. The second A is that we need to accept that our children will manifest their anxieties in a myriad of ways. Some children will become more defiant. Some children will act out by yelling back at you. Some children will become withdrawn and depressed. Who is your child? What is your child's face of their anxiety? It is very important to understand and accept that your child will have a unique way of exhibiting their anxiety. So become aware of the need beneath the behavior. Accept that your child will have many different faces of anxiety. And the third thing is to allow the big feelings. Understand that these unprecedented moments of crisis in our lives evoke big emotional reactions from us, of vulnerability, of guilt, of a desire to be perfect. But you can't be perfect during these times. Shame, because you feel you should be doing a whole lot of things, but you can't. So all these internal pressures create big feelings within yourself and your child. So becoming aware, allowing and accepting this is the key to parent your children consciously. Our inner child, so to speak, gets triggered in these moments as parents because we're trying to cope in a crisis. So what do we default to? We default to our early childhood habits that we created in childhood to cope with trauma. And part of those early childhood mechanisms are often very childish, childlike. They're primitive. We yell, we scream, we overeat, we want to run away. Flight or fight. Very primitive responses to trauma get evoked during a crisis. So understand yourself and your children that you are going to employ very primitive defense mechanisms during these times. So the answer is not to get more angry and more controlling. The answer is to get more compassionate, more allowing, more tolerant. Release your glasses of control and criticism and replace your glasses with release and surrender, compassion and tolerance. Crisis demands unusual coping mechanisms. Our understanding of these unusual mechanisms will allow us to traverse the tunnel of transition more easily than reactively, in a more empowered way than in a more disempowered way. This is the key. It is going to demand that you have acute psychological power right now. You see, when the external world feels like it's crumbling, it demands that we execute even greater emotional psychological power within us. This is key to tolerate and transcend a crisis. The key is that we evoke our superpowers in our mind. In order to convert our mind from a paralysis and a disempowered state during a state of crisis into an empowered state of resilience, requires us to understand fully that our mind is under our control. It is our key superpower during these unprecedented times of crisis. What do I mean by converting your mind into a superpower? The first thing to do to convert your mind to a superpower is to understand that during a crisis, we humans have an infinite power to be the first A, which is adaptive. Human beings are resilient. We are by nature adaptive. When our children see us, parents, adapting to the situation, they will feel confident to do the same. What does it mean to be adaptive? You see, adaptation is a profound skill that we all have within us, but we need to ignite as our superpower during these times of crisis. To adapt means to let go of what it was, to let go of our past habits, and understand that we need to develop new coping skills in the present moment. Adaptation requires that we completely do away, cut off, slough off all our old ways of dealing with things, and understand that we need to activate new means of coping with the present situation. So in this pandemic, for example, we are all seeing this on a global level. We have no choice but to let go of the past. We want to cling to the past, you see. We want to say, but that's how it used to be and that's how it should be. But this is where we will become maladaptive, by clinging to the past. You see, when we cling to the past, we actually engage in our own maladaptation. Adaptation requires that we let go of the past. This is the key psychological superpower that we need to develop during this time. Adaptation to the present moment, not to what it was, but to what it is. The second way we entertain maladaptive behaviors is that we crave the future. So we entertain what if thinking. You know, we go how things should be. What if this happened? What if that happened? And we go on this endless domino movie train of how things should be if things were to happen in a particular scenario. And we drive ourselves crazy by creating unending what if scenarios. To enter adaptation requires moving away from what if and entering the what is. What is right now? And this is how you turn away from maladaptation to adaptation. We human beings are supremely adaptive. In order to be adaptive, we need to ignite the superpower of resilience. Resilience requires that you stop living in the past and clinging to what was, stop craving the future and creating scenarios of what if, and enter the isness of the what is right here, right now. This is the key to convert maladaptation to adaptation. This is the first big A that we as parents need to activate within us. When our children see us adapting, they absorb our energy. They absorb our confidence. They absorb our resilience. You see, our energy is so important during times like these. And to be conscious of our energy requires that we enter a high vibrational frequency of superpowered resilience. When we begin to radiate with confidence, with surrender, with release, with tolerance for the chaos of the present moment, then our children begin to absorb this as well. So it all depends on the narrative by which we live. So I ask and I challenge all of us parents to understand our narrative so that we can exhibit the right narrative to our children. The right narrative to our children is that we are in a time that is new, that is unprecedented. During these times, we are going to feel big feelings. These feelings are your anxiety talking. It's your way of your anxiety trying to cope with an uncontrollable situation. I, as your parent, understand. I'm going to allow you to have your big feelings. Your big feelings are safe here. You see, you as a parent, when you understand your narrative, then you can speak to your child in a way that allows them to know that yes, we are in a time that is unprecedented and new. We are in the tunnel of transition between the old and the new. This is scary, but there is space and safety to express our scary emotions and our feelings. We can do this together. When you communicate this to your children see that you are adaptive. Your children see that you are capable, that you are resilient. And when they see that, they feel empowered to absorb this energy and to radiate with this energy themselves. You see, this is the key to how to empower our children during these times of crisis. The second A that you need to exhibit as a conscious parent, the message that you need to exhibit to your children is that we are not only adaptive, but that we are alchemizers. Who is an alchemizer? An alchemizer is someone who can take an ordinary situation, take a chaotic situation, take a negative and a difficult situation, and transform it and elevate it to gold, to growth. So this requires you to take this time out at home to elevate it to an opportunity rather than a crisis. How do you convert and transform a crisis into an opportunity? There are many ways that we parents can do this. We can do this on the physical level. We can begin to change the way our physical environment is. We can change how we've been living in a cluttered situation and move it into an uncluttered situation. We can organize our physical environment. We can change our emotional connectivity to our children. We can use this moment in time to connect to our children, to allow them to be seen by us like they've never been seen before. This is an unprecedented opportunity for parents to emotionally connect with their children. We can use this opportunity to spiritually grow and develop. As parents, we can take those self-help courses that we have never taken before. We can use this time to grow our own spiritual muscle. We can read books that will help us to become more emotionally resilient. So you see, in all sorts of ways, we can alchemize this time of crisis into an opportunity for growth. A true alchemizer and a true spiritual warrior understands that every opportunity in our life can either pivot into fear or pivot into growth and abundance. The choice is ours. How are you going to pivot this moment in history, this crisis point in your life, from fear into growth and abundance? This choice is your choice. This is where you get to ignite the superpower of your mind, of your resilience. No one is going to be able to tell you this. This is something you're going to have to do for yourself, by yourself. And the way to do it is to understand that not only is this moment going to be impermanent and is going to pass, but it is also going to leave an indelible opportunity within you to come out of this tunnel in a completely renewed way. You see, we are in a tunnel right now. If you use this as a moment of opportunity, we can emerge from this tunnel in an empowered and resilient way. Now that choice is yours. Am I going to pivot into fear, or am I going to convert and transform this opportunity into abundance and growth? That is your superpower. The third A that I challenge parents to activate during a time of crisis is to activate altruism. So you're an adapter, you're an alchemizer, but you are also altruistic. You see, we human beings are interconnected in an inextricable web of service. We are seeing this more now in this pandemic than ever before, that we are interconnected beings. Our well-being depends on others. So let's take this as a spiritual opportunity to turn our egoic selves of self-involvement into selves of altruism. And this is what you can teach your children, that we can adapt, we can alchemize, and we can be altruistic. That means that we can convert our sense of paralysis and helplessness into acts of service. When your children see you helping the neighbor, helping the grocery store workers, donating your money, donating your time, they begin to understand that this is an opportunity to enter community, to enter oneness. This is not a moment to withdraw. In fact, this is a moment to more engage. And this is what a crisis can teach us. This is an unprecedented moment in time, a portal, a tunnel, a birth canal to move from all that was old and did not work in your life into a renewed vision of a new sense of self, the birthing of a new self that can completely enter joy and bliss and empowerment like never before. This is an unprecedented portal, a birth canal from the old to the new. It all depends how you're going to activate it, how you're going to understand it, how you're going to articulate it, and how you're going to use this to your advantage. So, just to recap, during a time of crisis, big feelings are going to come up. To parent consciously during a time of crisis, we must become aware that our children's behaviors are going to be a mask and a disguise for an underlying need. Attuning to the underlying need, asking ourselves, what is my child trying to express right now? How is my child exhibiting their anxiety right now? Understanding that in a time of crisis, all of us resort to primitive, childlike defense mechanisms that we learned in childhood. Our flight and fight gets activated, and therefore we're going to cope in ways that are not very mature. Becoming aware of this allows us to have compassion for it and allows us to tap into the anxiety that is beneath the behavior. So instead of correcting the behavior, we begin to connect to our children at the level of their need. They begin to feel seen and understood, and then their behavior changes. You see, all maladaptive behavior is a cry for help. It is a disguise of a deep and underlying sense of helplessness on the inside. All our addictive behaviors on the outside, our screen addictions, our substance abuse addictions, our anger, our rage, our shame, is all a mask for a deep and dire sense of inner helplessness. When we parents understand that, then we can help our children feel more in control. The second thing we need to understand with our children is that we need to become absolutely accepting and allowing that their anxiety is going to have different masks, different faces, day by day, moment by moment. So don't get attached to how things should be, but instead become fluid, become adaptive moment by moment, that now my child is having this big feeling. Now my child is having another big feeling. And the waves of emotion are going to be varied, they're going to be constant, and they're going to feel overwhelming. But when you understand that these waves are just an expression of underlying anxiety, then you can better cope with them. And the third thing we're going to do is we're going to allow. We're going to allow for all feelings and emotions to exist without shaming, shunning, suppressing. You see, when we suppress a feeling and we don't allow the feeling to be felt, what has the danger of occurring is that feeling festers inside us like a wound, and then it bursts forth at a later date in an exaggerated maladaptive way. So become aware that there's a need beneath the feeling. Accept that was very defiant, very upset with her all the time, slamming doors and acting out and wanting to leave the house and break curfew. And the mother was just at a loss at how to deal with her child's defiance. So, as we typically do as unconscious parents, when our child is defiant, we become defiant as well. We forget that we are chronologically older than our children and we regress to a lower developmental age. We become toddlers and teenagers ourselves. So what was happening was that the parent was yelling and screaming at the kid and fighting back at the kid, resisting what was beneath the behavior. When I asked her to look beneath the behavior, to wear a different set of glasses, take out the glasses of criticism and correction and control, and wear the glasses of attunement, empathy, and compassion, everything changed. She began to understand that the child was just acting out because they were really anxious. And this was their way of seeking control. The louder they banged the door, the more control they felt in their lives. The more they yelled, the more control they had. When I began to teach the parent to replace words like my child is defiant with my child is feeling helpless, then she moved from her head and her desire to control into her heart and her desire to connect. You see, becoming aware and attuned to what the need is beneath the behavior will change your dynamic with your children. It will move you from correction to connection, from your head to your heart, from control to empathy, from a desire to correct and criticize and judge to a capacity to have deep empathy and compassion. This is what our children need from us during these times. This is what we need toward ourselves. You know, self-care is so important for us parents during these times of crisis because we ourselves feel overwhelmed. Part of our self-care routine must be to let go of perfectionism, to let go of our desire to be the most perfect parent at this time, to have the most perfect, clean, obsessively tidy house at this time, to have our children on a perfect schedule at these times. Times of crisis demand that we have greater compassion, that we have less shame around our desire to be perfectionists. We need to release our desire to be perfect during these times. This is what crisis demands from us. This is what I'm challenging you to do, is to enter deep and compassionate self-care for yourself. Part of self-care requires that you stop engaging obsessively with fear-mongering media, that you don't turn on the news all the time, that you restrict your news to 20 minutes a day, that you let go of your desire to control what cannot be controlled, that you enter a deep state of self-reflection, that you allow yourself to nurture yourself during these times. And the more that you obsessively tether yourself to media will just naturally escalate your anxiety. So don't do this to yourself. And your children absorb this. Your children are watching you, watching the media, and they're beginning to become addicted to the media themselves. So it is up to you as a parent to discipline yourselves and simply extricate from fear-mongering media. Self-care requires you to let go of perfectionism, let go of fear and fear-mongering media outlets, and truly nurture yourself from within. Release your desire for the shoulds in your life to manifest. No more shoulding on yourself. Stop shoulding on yourself. Every time you have a thought about what you should be doing, that's coming from fear and control. Realign that thought into what you are doing right now and enter gratitude and compassion for yourself. This is how you superpower your mind. You supercharge your mind. You inoculate your mind in a time of crisis. Remember, human beings are adaptive. You are infinitely resilient. You have the capacity to be adaptive in this present moment of crisis. What is required is that you let go of the past, that you bravely, courageously say to yourself, I am no longer in my past. I am in my present. And in the present moment, I am resilient. I am capable. I can do this. The second thing you need to do to adapt is let go of your craving of the future. Let go of all your what-if scenarios. Let go of your ideas and fantasies of how things should be. And again, repivot yourself to the present moment. Let go of the what-if and enter the what is. Understand that you have the capacity to be an alchemizer. You can convert this crisis into a moment of growth and opportunity. You can use this time, this pause, as a reset button. You can use this moment to let go of all that was not working in your own life. Use this moment to deeply introspect, to ask, how was I addicted to fear and control in my past? And how can I let go of inauthentic ways of living and use this moment, this portal, this tunnel, this transition to enter my most authentic self? When your children see you alchemizing this into power, into opportunity, then they are going to be boosted with this inoculation of confidence and courage themselves. And the third thing, which is the most essential thing in life, is to understand that we are interconnected. We are no longer going to operate as individual egos. We are going to see our place in the cosmos as interconnected beings in a vast chain, inextricably interconnected in a vast chain of cause and effect. Part of this is going to awaken us to realize we have a responsibility. We have a role to play. And this is how we're going to convert our helplessness into power, into action, by becoming altruistic, by engaging in acts of service. This is what your children need to see so that they can remember how to convert a crisis into the highest portal for growth. You know, pain can be the greatest transformer. I always say pain is the most powerful portal to a new consciousness. Well, we in a crisis are in pain. Why are we in pain? Because we're shedding old skin and the new hasn't come about yet. So we feel vulnerable, we feel naked, we feel exposed, we feel like we are in unfamiliar territory. This is how the birthing canal is. This is how a new birth gets emerged into the world. There has to be a canal of darkness. There has to be a canal of shedding skin and entering light. This is essential. And this is where we are in a time of crisis. Instead of looking at it as a time of survival, look at it as a new, unprecedented time of birthing. When you reorganize your mind from lack to abundance, you move away from fear into power. It's all in how you look at it, all in how you frame it. When you frame it in the right way, your narrative within yourself is a narrative of power. When your narrative is one of power, your children absorb the narrative of power. They are going to talk about this when they grow up as a moment of birthing, as a moment when history was made, when things changed, but nobody crumbled. In fact, all of us grew stronger. Let them have a narrative that they remember that our family and our humanity rose from the ashes like a phoenix into a symbol of unification, power, and oneness. Let them understand that history was made in this moment of crisis, either a personal history or a humanitarian history. Let them look back at this moment to remember that nobody crumbled in spirit. People may have died, things may have changed, financial worlds may have been rocked, and institutions may have crumbled, but nobody's spirit died. If anything, our spirits grew even stronger. So how your children remember this moment in time is your power right now, is in your hands right now. Each day, moment by moment. A crisis teaches us that we could never depend on our delusions of certainty. They were all delusions and illusions. They were all mirages. A crisis reminds us that life can never be lived in the past or the future. A crisis reminds us that the life best lived is the life lived in the present moment. Every wisdom mystical teacher wants to teach their audience to live in the present moment, but nothing does it better than a crisis. So a crisis is an opportunity to enter the correct time zone where life should truly be lived, not in the past, not in the future. The time zone where life is best lived is in the present moment. So you are being called, challenged, and beckoned to stop living in the future, to release what was in the past, and reinvent and re-envision yourself in the here and now. Each day, moment by moment. This is what the crisis is teaching us. But this is what is the teaching of every wisdom tradition. You are being asked to learn what every wisdom teacher masters in moments of meditation, that a life best lived is a life lived each day, moment by moment. So that is my offering to you, my humble call to action, my token to you to understand how to transform this moment in time into an unprecedented state of growth, development, and evolution. The power is in your hands. Take the power, uncage yourself, and fly. So I'm going to answer some questions. So Natasha asks, are there any healthy expectations that we can have of our children during this difficult period in time? Let me first say that the word expectations itself is a cause of most of our sufferings. We suffer because we expect something from reality that isn't there. When there is a big gap between our expectations and reality, the greater the gap, the greater the suffering. So just be aware, by using the word expectation, it means you are asking something from reality that may not come forth. The more you cling to your expectation, healthy or unhealthy, you are going to suffer if it doesn't manifest in reality. All our suffering occurs because of a great gap between our expectation or our fantasy of what should be and what is. So understand that. Now, having said that, every parent wants to know, are there any healthy expectations we can have? Of course. I always say, and I write about this, that we can expect our children to have life-affirming habits during every day. What are life-affirming habits? Life-affirming habits are habits that nurture their spirit ubiquitously across the globe. Every human being has life-affirming habits that can nurture their spirit, such as hygiene, good hygiene, education, good sleep and self-care, healthy respect for self and others. These are the healthy life-affirming boundaries that you can expect a child to have. The ego-affirming boundaries are expectations that are coming from your ego, such as, I wish for my child to play the piano every day for 20 minutes. The reason they're coming from your ego, and you know it's coming from your ego, is because it's not global, it's not ubiquitous. Everyone in the globe is not going to be a better human being if they play the piano for 20 minutes. So that's how you differentiate between a healthy expectation or a healthy boundary and an egoic boundary. Having said this, even with healthy expectations, we have to go about it in a conscious manner. If you're going to institute a healthy expectation in an unhealthy, egoic, controlling way, it's going to be unhealthy. So ultimately, the biggest challenge for parents is to try your best to have healthy expectations, but don't go about it in a corrective, punitive, threatening, shameful way. Try to be flexible and negotiate those expectations in a way that empowers your children, allows them to feel control, even more so in times of crisis, and allows them to feel like they are in charge of their own destiny. Jamie asks, when kids say they don't care or aren't scared, we believe them and don't push it? So children, you see, have this resilience and sense of invincibility that is quite marvelous. I have a teenager, she's 17 years old. She truly thinks everyone can get the virus except her. This is the nature of the idealistic, fantastical, chimerical, thinking that teenagers especially and children have. The beautiful part about this is it allows them to live life in an unabashed, unrestricted, unrestrained way. The hardship with it is that they can undertake in risky behavior. So knowing the line between allowing our children to feel empowered and that they got this, that's the powerful side of their wishful thinking and their idealistic thinking, And the line where it goes into danger and risk-taking behavior is the eternal balance in all children and adolescents. It's not particular to a crisis, but we have to then lay very clear boundaries: who they can meet, who they can't see, what is their curfew, and mean it. You know, people often, especially parents, feel that when they have to institute a boundary and mean it, it means that they have to punish the child, that they have to coerce the child, that they have to shame the child, or they have to take away something from the child and give them consequences which are more punishment based. And I always say that the way to mean a boundary is to truly embody the boundary. And the way to embody the boundary is to create the conditions in the home where the boundary is likely to not get violated. For example, if your kid eats too many cookies, take away the cookies from the home. With teenagers, all our teenagers are addicted to the screen. So if that's the case, and you feel like the screen and their obsession with the screen is causing them to not engage in healthy behaviors, then we have to take away the screen. But we don't take away the screen just because they talk rudely to us. We take away the screen because the screen is the natural cause and effect creator of the maladaptive behavior. Then we tell the kid, you created this consequence. I didn't create the consequence. The behavior created the consequence. Those are called natural consequences versus artificial self-imposed consequences. Maureen says, my teenager is socializing with his friends online all day. So I answered this already for Maureen, that our children during a time of crisis are going to adapt to their anxiety in ways that may not match ours. In this particular crisis of the pandemic, we are in social isolation. So it's quite natural that our children are going to be more obsessive about socially connecting with their friends online than ever before. So we're going to have to allow that and adapt to that and understand that, and then create a healthy boundary. But we're going to have to be a lot more flexible than we will be comfortable with. Lewis says, how do you face day-to-day information that is just so terrible if you can't believe it? During a time of crisis, it is natural to become dependent on our government, on our media, on our leaders to pave the way and shine the light. Often, this is the very thing that takes away our light and creates more anxiety. So I challenge parents in particular to use a time of crisis to actually stay away from fear-mongering media and discipline themselves to nurture their own common sense and follow their own light and their own path. Don't wait for permission for your anxiety to be released from your leaders. They are going to only exacerbate your anxiety. Who do you turn to in times of crisis to allay your anxiety? To people like me, to wisdom teachers, to psychologists, to teachers who are going to teach you how to control your anxiety. You see, our leaders and the government during a time of crisis, they're not concerned with your emotional and mental health. They're not concerned with your emotional and mental well-being. They're concerned with statistics and facts and data, which constantly change every single day. When you are dependent on stats and data and graphs, it's quite natural your anxiety is going to react to the data. It's like watching your stocks go high and fall every moment. Stock brokers have very high levels of anxiety for that reason, because they're constantly looking at data. That is not a way to care for ourselves during a time of crisis. During a time of crisis, we need to take off our anxiety and understand that data actually exacerbates anxiety. You may think it doesn't, but because you're tethered to the rise and fall of data every moment, you're actually like a gambler. You're actually like a stockbroker, constantly fixated and addicted to the rise and fall of external sources of control. When we rely on external forces of control, our anxiety goes high. So in times of crisis, it is more mandatory that we learn how to manage our own internal sense of control and extricate ourselves from external control. Vota asks, during mandatory work from home, I'm struggling to keep focused on the work while 2 meters away from a screaming and crying child. Any good tips how to ignore and stay focused? Well, this is what I teach every single day. How do we stay focused during a time of crisis? Staying focused during a time of crisis is almost anti-intuitive. It goes against the purpose of the crisis. The crisis demands that we actually become multi-focused. And here we are trying to be singular focused. A crisis, by definition, requires us to be in this state of multi-layered awareness. All our layers of functioning become activated in a crisis. We need to be parents, we need to be teachers, we need to be spouses, we need to be cleaners, we need to be bill payers, we need to be mortgage payers, we need to be earners. And especially in this crisis, we're doing all of this at home with everyone in one closed space. So understand that trying to be singularly focused in a time that demands you to be multi-focused goes against, it's cross-purposed, and you're going to feel more stressed. Rather than trying to be focused, I want you to release that expectation from yourself, because it is an unattainable standard of perfection, and instead tell yourself, I am going to be interrupted every single minute. Release control and enter a state of expecting chaos. You see, it's a mindset. When you expect chaos, then you're not upset when your control has been messed up with, when your focus has been messed up with. When you expect to be interrupted, then when you are interrupted, you're not upset. You see, this is where our expectations need to align with the nature of the crisis in the moment. When we align our expectations with the nature of the crisis, we have lower expectations. Stop trying to be focused. Expect to be interrupted. That's all I can tell you. It's a mindset. When your mindset shifts, you are more at peace, and then you feel like you are actually more in control because you're expecting it. Then when it doesn't happen, you're actually filling your bucket rather than depleting your bucket. So I think we are reaching the end of our live, and I want to end with some closing remarks and just again repivot you to where we are, who are we supposed to be, and how we can manage this. It's all about how you frame it with the superpower of your mind. In a time of crisis, it feels like everything is falling apart because your external world is shattering before your eyes. It creates an intense state of inner panic. Your childhood defenses of coping are going to come to the front, and those childhood methods of coping are not very mature. They're not very wise. They are immature. I am here to teach you how to convert your childish defense mechanisms into adult, wise defense mechanisms so that you are coping with this crisis in a state of power, not in a state of childlike, primitive flight or fight, flight or fight, flight or fight. So in order to move from childishness to wisdom, you need to embark on a path of supercharging, superpowering your mind. I teach this every day, by the way, on my Facebook page, and I have a group where I meditate daily. I give parenting advice, so just know that. You have to turn to the right places for help in order to superpower your mind. So in order to superpower your mind during a moment of crisis, you need to understand where you are in this moment in time. You are right now in a position and place of transition. Positions and places of transitions are like no man's lands. They are a place where there is no definition, there is no predictability, there is no familiarity. Everything feels unfamiliar, dangerous, unknown, and scary. This is the reason anxiety goes high during a moment of crisis. A crisis by nature is a turning point. It is a transition. It is a tunnel. It is a birth canal. I cannot give you enough analogies to let you understand where you are in this unique period of time in your life. If you keep thinking you're in your past, you're going to suffer. If you keep thinking your future is coming, you're going to suffer. A crisis is where the past no longer is, the future hasn't come, now you're in no man's land. When you understand this, you release your expectation, you're clinging to the past and you're craving to the future, and you begin to act in an adaptive way. Now you begin to accept your current situation. You allow your feelings to emerge. You begin to release your idea of the shoulds and perfectionism, and you begin to enter this state of surrender. Grace comes when you surrender, when you stop trying to control that which you cannot control. When you enter grace, you actually boost your emotional state of mind with immunity, with inoculation, with power. And this is what a crisis demands. You see, a crisis by nature is going to deplete you if you stay addicted to external forces of control. A state of crisis demands that you move from the external, from all that you cannot control on the outside, to the internal, all that you can control on the inside. This is where we have limitless power, in taking charge of our superpower mind. And when you reorganize your mind and you begin to exercise your power as a human being, you begin to realize you are resilient, you are adaptive, you are capable. This is a moment in time that will pass. If you live it in the present, moment by moment, this too shall pass, and you will emerge out of this tunnel a renewed human in a renewed humanity. So deep breath, everyone. We got this. It all depends on how we orient and pivot ourselves as parents and what our children absorb. We can do this with a power that is within you once you take charge of your mind. Let go of repivot from fear to abundance. So thank you for joining me. I'm honored to be here. Come and join me on my other page for daily parenting advice and for meditation. I'm just checking in that everything's okay. I'm just making sure with my assistant that I answered most of the questions. But I'm here for you as a wisdom teacher, as a resource, as a support. And I'm so grateful to Goldcast, because Goldcast cared about its parents, because Goldcast cared about its children, that it invited me in this space. So thank you, Goldcast, for showing up, for answering the call in this moment of crisis, and for showing up for your community and for letting me be part of it. How honored am I? Thank you, Goldcast audience. My views are not traditional. My views are not typical. It's not easy to change, to become a conscious person. It's not easy to look within, but that's what I teach. And that is the only way we can evolve as a one and as a million. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, and you got this.